Hi, my name's Elijah, and welcome to my podcast, Songwriting for Songwriters. Today, my special guest is Mark Nevin. Singer-songwriter and guitarist Mark came to prominence alongside Eddie Reader in Fairground Attraction in the 1980s, writing the band's #1 hit, Perfect. He went on to write songs with Morrissey, Ringo Starr, and many more acts, as well as establishing his own solo career. We speak about how Perfect came to be a #1 record and the early days of Fairground Attraction, Mark's desire to prove a palm reader wrong, his upbringing, his faith, and his songwriting process. So please enjoy this podcast, subscribe, and thank you for being here. Welcome to my podcast, Songwriting for Songwriters. Today, my special guest is Mark Nevin. How are you doing, Mark?
Good. That was quick. I was having a glass of water then as you asked me that question. I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. Thank you for being on the podcast. I've been looking around and listening to lots of your music over the last few days, and something that I came across on Twitter, I think yesterday, it's about, I think for my maths, which isn't a strong point, it's 35 years since the first of A Million Kisses came out. Is this May, I think?
Exactly. Yeah, I think this week, actually. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Quite a remarkable thing to look back upon, I guess, that time of your life and that the success of it. And, you know, what do you feel about it now, looking back from this vantage point in time?
Well, it's surreal, really. And what's made it more surreal is the fact that the four members of Fairground Attraction, Simon, Roy, Eddie, and myself, actually met up for the first time in over 30 years.
Oh,
The
wow.
day before yesterday.
Wow.
So that was really kind of not because it was an anniversary, it just was a coincidence it happened to be. But it was great to see them all and be together and chat, and it's like a dream, really. So long ago, and it's also strange, you know.
Yeah. But what if anyone's ever been in a band, that feeling of going through something like that together, you know, it's time in the trenches, isn't it, with a band? You good or bad, there's ups and downs of being in a band, but you go through something as a group of people, and I imagine in your case, where it's such an extraordinary success, that it's a big thing to go through, and you all have wives and girlfriends and children, but that particular band dynamic is quite a rare thing, isn't it, to have in your life?
It was huge, yeah. It was such an important part of all of our lives, and it changed our lives completely. There's a real before and after experience in so many ways, and it was heaven and hell, really. At the sort of best bits, it was kind of beyond your wildest dreams, and at the worst bit, it was beyond your wildest dreams as well, really.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, but before Fairground Attraction, that you were already a songwriter, right? You'd already made the decision to kind of make that your life before you joined the band.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was that was what I was going to do. It's like I look back now. When did I decide that that's what I did? I suppose I think it was when I was at school, and I was we were in the English class, and we did, you know, the comprehension, when you have to sort of, you give the answer in the question in the answer. So, you know, so what is a load of peas? A load of peas is green things, you know, whatever it is. And I did this, and nobody else in the class understood the concept of comprehension. And then the teacher said, "Oh, Mark's got it." I thought, I'm the best at this. I'm the best at writing things that people understand. This must be what I do.
Oh, cool.
I think that I look back now, there's little moments like that. It kind of like give you a kind of, oh, it's something that I am the finest at. And so I think something as little as that was probably put me on the way. And then I saw David Bowie on Lift Off with Aisha, which was a kids' TV program on ITV, and I was about 13 years old, and I just didn't know what hit me. He was singing Starman with Mick Ronson. He's afraid he'll blow our mind, and I think, well, he did blow my mind, and I know lots of other people from my generation when they saw that, and I thought, this is what I do. Whatever that guy's doing, it's kind of what I do. I didn't have to find out what he is writing songs. I thought, I see, and I got a guitar for a $5, and Mr. Hargraves, who was my English maths teacher, was up north somewhere. I can't remember, like real northern accent. Like he gave me the chords to "Rave On" by Buddy Holly.
Wow.
Brilliant. And And so I learned to play C and F and Buddy Holly Rave On, and then I just started writing songs.
Do you remember your first song?
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, it's called I Wish I Had an Orchestra, it was called.
Was it? Brilliant. That's a
Yeah.
good... That's a brilliant title for a first song. I love that. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, mine was called Land of Hope and Glory, which was very
That did quite
generic and
well.
derogatory. Yeah, I can still play it from time to time. So, did you grow up in a musical household then? Was that were your parents and musical
No,
people?
not really, not at all. There was no musical instruments, nothing like that. It was my dad was, Welsh, and he loved to sing in church, and singing in church was my dad's thing.
Right.
And he loved sort of Mario Lanza and Judy Garland and all these sort of singers of those. So we'd on a Sunday it would be kind of like my dad impersonating Mario Lanza and things. But they were great storytellers. My mum and dad always told great stories, and I loved stories. And also, my mum used to read me the parables in the Bible, and
Okay.
I loved the parables because they had a sort of, they had a meaning to them, and and it gives you this really nice sort of taste in your mouth when you think, oh, I
Yeah.
see, it means this.
Yeah.
And so I love songs that have got a meaning to them.
Yeah.
I can't stand some vacuous nonsense in it. Well, who can? Who does?
Yeah.
Well, lots of people do, I suppose. Anyway, that's the trouble. But I like songs that give you a kind of, oh, I see, it's like this, it's like that, and I'm
Mm.
sure that comes from like that sort of parable.
That's really fascinating, actually. That as a background. So, yeah, because I suppose you always in those parables, you kind of find yourself in them, don't you? As well as you hear the story, but you also are questioning your own choices or what you would do or your conscience and things like
Yeah,
that. It's an interesting thing to bring into songwriting that as well.
absolutely. And my mum used to, if we watch a film, at the end of the film, my mum would say, what was that about then? What's the moral of the story?
That's
She'd
interesting.
ask us, and so I always reflect on the moral of a story and what was right and what was wrong, and
That's a great thing for your mum to do that, to be curious enough to inquire about what you thought and dig into what your reactions to it. I love that.
yeah, she was
Almost it's
great.
almost like an art college parenting style. It's like,
Well, she was nothing like an art college type of person, but we I'm one of 8 kids, and
oh wow.
it was very Catholic religious family. We went to church every weekend, but always went to sort of Catholic schools with nuns and priests, and so much of my musical influence really comes from that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure. There's something about when we were kids, we'd always singing in assembly, singing hymns in assembly, which I'm not sure if it goes on anymore, but it was something I didn't, some of the kids hated doing, but I always loved the kind of sound of us all singing hymns in
yeah,
assembly. It's quite a lovely thing to do. Like we had to do it every morning, and that was
yeah.
a great thing to do as a kid. I think to access to just the sound of singing.
Absolutely. No, it's lovely. I loved all that, and you know, yeah, it's interesting because I was saying to my wife a couple of weeks ago about um when I first started playing guitar, I was in church. It was in the 60s. Uh, the Catholic Church changed with Vatican II, and they tried to modernize it and bring in folk music into the church, which
Oh
was
wow.
pretty naff. So like
Okay.
Kumbaya and all these, Michael Rose, the boat ashore, and all things like this. And so me and my brother would play guitars in the church, and that's when we first started playing.
Right.
And I said to my wife, I said, you know what, it's really interesting. I realized if it wasn't for the bringing in of what was called folk mass,
Yeah.
I don't think I ever would have done what I did. It was kind of like that. Playing in church folk mass was the kind of thing that got me started. And by sort of weird coincidence, whatever you want to call, we then realized that the church, we live right next to a church called St. Augustine's Church.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the 60s, they had this huge first folk mass from this church that was broadcast on the BBC. And
Wow.
there was like a cast of thousands playing this pretty bizarre kind of modern version of sort of things that our father played with, like funky soul folk flute.
Amazing.
And it's actually on YouTube if you look at
Oh, it's
it, the
cool.
folk
Yeah.
mass at St. Augustine's Church.
Wow.
And it was broadcast live. I thought, well, that's just surreal. Like, that I was just saying about folk mass. I know I hadn't really sort of entered my mind for decades.
Mm.
And suddenly I realized we live in the shadow of the church, which was its birthplace. It was kind of quite surreal.
That's fantastic. I love that kind of stuff. And you're right, the small things sometimes, not this is not a small thing, but a kind of coincidental or something which happened as a result of someone else, like the folk mass thing, how important that is in lots of people's lives as songwriters, how little things can mean you pick up a guitar. I remember for me, the music teacher in year 7 said, "Oh, he wants to play guitar." And my dad had always been a songwriter. And part of me was thinking, no,
Yeah.
I can't be bothered because he plays it. And you know, I'll do something else. And my hand went up without me kind of wanting it to. It's like an involuntary, and so then I ended up kind of playing
Yeah.
guitar, so it's strange little things like that. So
Yeah.
when you made the decision though to kind of start writing songs, was that it for you? Was that your kind of, that's what I want to do in life, that's my music is my thing? Did anything else come up as a career choice, or were you very certain
No,
about it?
no, that was definitely it. Then me and my brother Martin, we were just sat in our bedroom playing the guitars, and he was Martin Nevin and I was Mark Nevin. So we were both M Nevin. So I then added the E to differentiate myself from him. So I
Yeah,
became Mark E Nevin. And
right.
actually years later, Mark E Smith of the of the Fall said that Mark E Nevin from Fairground Attractions nicked my E. I thought, no, I haven't actually, Mark E Smith. I had my E since I was about 13. But
That's
it's just
brilliant.
it was just one of those things. But so anyway, we used to play guitars, and then when I was 15, I left school. I'm straight out of here.
Right.
Couldn't stand at school, and I went to my careers officer, and he says, "Oh, wait, Mark, what are you going to do then?" It was Bristol. He says,
Right.
"Right, what are you going to do for a career?" I says, "Oh, I'm going to be a songwriter." He went, right. He says, "Why not just be an astronaut?" Like, because like around our village, which was all sort of farming and rural, there were no songwriters except for the tuba player from the Wurzels lived on the road. That's the
Amazing.
only bit of glamour we had.
Brilliant.
And I said, "No, I want to be a songwriter." He said, "Oh, let's have a look at your exam work." Like, "Oh, I see you got like an O level in art and a CSE in woodwork." Right. He says, "I think you'd be best to suited to some kind of factory work." And of course, where we lived, it was right next to Cadbury's chocolate factory.
Okay. Right. Right. Right.
And so that would have meant there. And I said, I'm not working at Cadbury's. And if actually I've got a song called Curly Whirly Boy, which is all about
Brilliant.
how they told me that I would never mount to anything. I should be a curly whirly boy
Wow,
making
man.
chocolate covered toffee that everybody loves. Well, I ain't gonna. And so I didn't ever work at Cadbury's chocolate factory. And I got my guitar, and I actually got a job in a guitar shop where I got to play lots of guitars. And then when I was 18, I came to London.
Okay.
But I played in bands with my brother. We just sort of cover
Yeah.
bands.
Yeah. So how did you go from moving to London and guitar shop into working as a songwriter at that point?
Well, the first thing I did when I came to London was join the Moonies, like a religious cult.
Really?
That was
Wow.
Yeah, that was really because I think, coming from a big family,
Yeah.
there's 10 of us around dinner table every night. You kind of
Sure.
like miss everybody. And
Yeah, of
so I
course.
found a sort of religious cult family. They called themselves the family. And that was pretty traumatic because it coincided perfectly with the Jonestown massacre
Oh, Christ.
and so it was on the front page, like
Wow.
thousands of people kill themselves in mass suicide in cults. It's like, I've joined a cult. It's like, like, because I didn't call it a cult, but it
Blimey.
was. So anyway, I sort of once I finally got out of that, it was a very traumatic experience, and it was kind of
Mm,
hard to escape.
yeah.
Literally, it was a chase down the streets and all that sort of thing.
Wow.
And I left London then. I went on sort of like hitching around Europe with my girlfriend, my first girlfriend, and I came back to London and I got another job in a guitar shop, and I just started writing songs and had a band with some of my mates who were up from Bristol as well, and kept doing that. And I didn't really know where it was going to go because like the music was going in a way that was really not like I didn't really fit. It was going sort of increasingly electronic
Right.
and
Yes. Yeah.
indie and stuff. And then I'd sort of learned jazz chords and things
Yeah.
that weren't very fashionable at all.
Okay.
Really wondered what I was going to do. I was in different little bands and stuff, and then I went hitching around America. And before I left, I discovered this author called William Sarayan.
Right.
He's an Armenian. Well, he was born in Fresno in California near San Francisco, but of Armenian descent. And he wrote all these little short stories. One of them, the famous one, was called The Daring Young Man on the Flying Trapeze, which was the name of his first collection of short stories. And I loved these little stories, and they were very much like parables.
Okay.
They were little short stories with a kind of big beginning, middle, and the end, and a kind of gooey feeling inside. And I thought, oh, maybe I should write stories instead, because I realized that, and I'd tried to write stories, but I just thought, well, the thing is with a song, you play A minor and it's sort of like 2 pages of prose, it's
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
like it's raining, you know what I mean? And so, but then I started to think, but I want to write songs that are like these stories. And so
Fantastic.
I started to form this sort of idea of the almost like poetry, but with music, but it wasn't poetry, it was songs.
Yeah.
But with a very sort of little vignettes with stories to them, and it was a thing that I was doing, and I wanted to somehow make this into a recording, but I didn't really know how to do that. And by then I'd met Eddie Reader from
Yeah. Right.
Fairground
Yeah.
Attraction, and before, and she was singing with the Rhythmics, and Alison Moy as a backing singer of people. She wanted to be a solo singer. She didn't want to obviously just carry on being a backing singer. And I had these songs. Um, uh, Anyway, but it was so unfashionable. I mean, it was so like I never expected it to take off any more than just a little indie weird thing that I do for myself, really.
Yeah.
And she wrote to me. I've gone back to America. I spent quite a bit of time in America, and she wrote to me, "Oh, you could write songs. You're the person who could write songs." And she's like such a fantastic singer.
Yeah.
And I came back, and I went to her little prefab. She had a prefab in Walnut Tree Walk in Lambeth. It's right where Charlie Chapman was from around there. So it's a little like wartime prefab. And I said, I've got these songs, I said, I want to form a group and did these songs. One of them was called Fairground Attraction, and they were like that sort of 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes long with a sort of story to them. She's going, oh, great, I want these songs. I want to be a solo singer. I want you to give me the songs. I said, oh, no, I'm not giving the songs to anyone. I want you to sing the songs in my band.
Okay.
Oh, no, I want you to give the songs to me. And this was the kind of fight that we had.
Right.
And it was like, we were both adamant that one of us was going to win. And it's quite heated. And, eventually we had, she was still singing backing vocals with Alison Moy at the time, and one day we went to what I call Kite Flyers Hill, which is Parliament Hill in Hampstead Heath.
Yeah.
And she was just about to go away on some big American tour with Alison, and she said, if you take the songs around, because by then we'd done from all sort of port studio recordings and things to record companies, maybe we could be a band. It was in the sort of vague kind of way. I went, okay. And so while she was away, I took the tapes around to different record companies. Literally in those days, you'd go in with a cassette, and play them. And then we got offered 3 different record deals.
Fantastic.
So when she came back, I said, we've got these record deals. We've got to,
wow.
But I missed out a lot of stuff about the whole thing with fortune telling was a big part of
Oh,
this.
go on. Tell us the fortune telling thing. I'm into a bit of esoteric.
Well, what happened was my mum was into all the fortune telling thing, and she used to sort of really believe in it all, palm readers and clairvoyance and stuff like that. And so I was always very wary of going anywhere near anything like that.
Okay.
And she said, anyway, I had this girlfriend for a while, Jane Eyre. She had a band called Jane Eyre and the Belvedere. They were signed to Stiff Records.
Right.
And she was really into this stuff, and she said, oh, let's do this palm reading thing. I was like, oh, no. So eventually she managed to convince me, and she had this woman called Audrey came around,
Brilliant.
Audrey read our palms, and she read one. She said to me, "Oh, you're never gonna achieve what you want. You're never gonna be a songwriter. This is not gonna happen." It's just
Right.
exactly my worst nightmare, literally. I mean, what? No, no, it's not. And then she said, she did Jane's hand, and she said, "Oh, you're really gonna," because Jane was a singer. You're gonna. It's really gonna happen for you. You're gonna meet somebody you're gonna work with and having a relationship with. Oh, great! I'm gonna lose my girlfriend and my like sort of career dreams in one palm reading. And
Bloody
I was like devastated by this. And so anyway, I got to anyway, this palm reader said it's not because you haven't got the talent, it's because just before you get anywhere, somebody else is going to ruin it for you. Oh, it's even worse. It's like it's like, well, I'm paying for this. Anyway, so I really got quite ill because I believed it all, and I went to live in Akron, Ohio, where Jane was from, which is
Wow.
the
Okay.
rubber capital
Yeah.
of America, where Dunlop and Goodyear tires are from.
Wow.
And I worked in the garden of the guy who was the CEO of Goodyear tires. I worked in as his gardener,
Right.
and he liked having me because the CEO of Goodyear of Dunlop tires was his surname was Nevin, and he thought it was really funny. What a joke! I've got someone with my rival's surname doing my gardening,
Okay.
extra
Yeah.
humiliation sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got to the point where I thought, well, I've got to prove this wrong. I've got to
Right.
prove it all wrong because I started believed it so much because
Sure.
my mum had
Sure.
always believed it so much.
Okay.
It was like if a palm reader told it something to you, it was going to happen. That's what I had been brought up to believe.
Right.
So it's like God coming down and telling me this
Yeah.
was the facts when
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
I heard it. So I thought I just got to prove this wrong. And anyway, I went back to London. I broke up with Jane and I went back to London and I lived in a place in Fordwich Road in Cricklewood. It was a squat. And I used to call this place the Academy of Fine Popular Music because
Fantastic.
I decided it was where I was going to sort of
I love
master
that.
my
I
craft.
love that. That's great.
And I started to write these songs. I was writing these sort of funny songs. I was writing songs a bit like Dusty Springfield, and I loved the sort of Dusty Springfield 60s records. And I was we did this, the first record I made with Eddie was this sort of song where we did these two Dusty Springfield type ballads on, and we were called the Academy of Fine Popular Music. That was the name. And it
Brilliant.
wasn't until years later, like 30 years later, I found out that squat, the Academy of Fine Popular Music in Fordwich Road, was opposite the house that Dusty Springfield was born in.
Jesus. Wow, man. Love
Yeah,
that. That's
it's mad,
amazing.
isn't it?
That's crazy.
And so, anyway, Eddie and me had this argument, and I got this three labels: Phonogram, BMG, and Ireland, all wanted to sign us. And Phonogram said, "We're just going to see you play live once, and then we'll sign you." So I said to Eddie, she just got back from this Japanese tour or something, and I said, "Look, we've got to do this gig straight away, and it's like tomorrow because they'll sign us on Wednesday if we can just show them we can play live." Oh, so I had to get a gig. So I'm going on holiday. I said, "Well, can you just wait an extra day?" Um, so all right, one more day. So managed to get a gig at a place called the New Merlin's Cave in King's Cross. And Dave Bates, who was the head of Phonogram Records, came down and he walked in. There was like no gear on the stage, and he said, "Well, I thought you were playing." "Yeah, we are in a minute." He said, "Where's the gear?" I said, "We haven't got any gear." And
Oh,
we got up. It was just Eddie singing, me playing the acoustic guitar, Simon Edwards playing that strange Mexican acoustic bass, and Roy Dodds with a sort of tiny little snare and brush. And we just played a set all the way. There's all the songs that are, by then learned.
fantastic.
It's exactly like the Fairground Attraction record.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not even a microphone, never mind any effects. And it was just like, wow, so we're signing you tomorrow.
Oh, amazing. Love that.
But you see, one of the things was, I thought this thing in my head, just at the last minute, somebody will ruin it for you, you see.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I thought, you see, well, that would be a manager or a producer. I thought, right, no managers, no producers, because they'll ruin it. So I said to them, I said, anything is that I want to produce the record. We don't want any producers. And this is in the 80s when it was all about
Sure.
producers.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, yeah, okay, all right then. And just before we signed, the A&R guy made some sort of remark about a certain producer he thought might be good to do it. I thought he's going to go back on his promise about the producer.
Right.
So I went to RCA, which was my preferred choice because David Bowie, who and had been on RCA, and I said to them, "Look, we're going to sign with Phonogram tomorrow," and it's a Thursday night. It was actually, and I said, but I said to them, we don't want producers, and I think they're going to go back on their promise because they've made this suggestion about its producer. If you can, promise us that we definitely won't have a producer, we'll sign with you instead. And they went, okay. So come Friday morning, Phonogram were there with cameras and champagne, and we just didn't turn up.
Wow.
And it's really quite frightening for me because I was really this thing. So at the
Yeah.
last minute, someone's going to ruin it. It was in my
Yeah.
head, and I was in a nervous breakdown
I
state
bet
all
you were.
day. And I
Christ.
said, we've got to sign it today, though. We've got to sign the deal today. So they managed to get all the contracts ready, and we signed it. And I was like, just tears in my eyes when we signed that deal.
Wow, man. That's
Yeah.
quite the
And I
story.
remember we ran out of Eddie and me ran out of there. This is a very short, condensed version. It gets even weirder if I went into it long term. But we ran out. I remember coming down Bedford Avenue down by Tottenham Court Road there, and it's torrential rain. Eddie and me. It was just a magic night, and I remember ringing up my mum and dad in the phone box, but long before mobiles, in the phone box with a ring, going, we just signed a record deal with RCA Records, £75,000, which in 1988, 87 was an awful lot of money. And it was just like, to my parents, it's like, really? Seriously? Yes, seriously,
Wow, man. That's amazing. That's really amazing. So when you that's quite it's blown my mind a bit, that with the palm reader. That's quite so we managed to avoid the palm reader's prediction anyway. We swerved off the kind of person who was going to possibly muck it up for you. Did any more esoteric or palm reading moments come true on the climb to success?
Well, going to come true. Well, no, I completely proved it wrong because it's a
Well
load
done.
of rubbish. And I became very interested in it. Or I could, I remember when we won of course we did the record. I had no producer. We just produced it ourselves with Kevin Maloney, engineer, sort of, just keeping us in tune and stuff. And then record came out, Perfect came out, went to number one. It was just wow,
that's amazing to at that age as well, when you're kind of not in the industry, because it's quite a scary thing, but to be certain in that way, to say something like, I want to produce the album, it's a brave and bold thing to do as a young man, isn't it? To make that, to risk the possible kind of industry, A&R people who think they know best, but to actually go on your own instinct and make that a sort of definite thing you need is a brave move.
Well, it was, yeah, it is in a way. But I mean, I don't like to sort of brag about it because it was more kind of like an absolute focus. It was in reaction to this thing. And so it was brave, but it was sort of also young and stupid. It was also stupid in a way. But I just knew what I wanted it to be like, which was like these stories by William Saroyan.
Yeah.
Just little kind of vignettes with little stories, begin like the parables, just little beginning, middle, and end, give you a gooey feeling.
Yeah,
and like with no production, I don't want any production. Just it made him vulgar, kind of like we're trying.
Yeah.
And so I wanted the music to be so minimal, like a sort of shaker wood frame around a story, whether you didn't even notice the instrumentation in a way. And so Eddie's voice was so beautiful, and she would just sing the words almost like a musical poem in this tiny wooden frame of a minimalistic sort of accompaniment. And anything else would have been vulgar, sort of.
It's really interesting to talk about that, because it's quite something I think about sometimes, or overthink about with different songwriters. But what you've described there is kind of like, the author that you were talking about, and the want to keep things simple and in a frame. Sometimes it's interesting to hear songwriters talk about their influences and their feelings about how they wanted things to be, because you can really hear it in the songs. And often I think people think that, a song comes along, you write it, but actually it just goes to show you the kind of taste decisions and the things that floated into your mind as you're growing up and as you're kind of becoming a musician, how important those little things are and how important they shape your kind of songwriting worldview, if you like.
Totally, yeah. And it was all about purity and truth. I
Yeah.
was, I was on a quest to find truth, in a sort of religious way. From I'm from a very religious family, and having come out of the Moonies, which would really blew my mind in terms of my religious faith, and it really
Mm.
tested me, and wanted to find beauty. And in his William Surround stories, I found that I actually ended up going to his house, and
Wow.
he was long dead, but sort of where he'd written his poems and books, and I read actually about everything he ever wrote, and that was a big influence. And I just wanted to create it so pure. And
Yeah.
Eddie's voice was the perfect voice because her singing was so pure,
Yeah.
and her soul. She was such a sort of. We were very similar. We were 2 weeks born apart.
Right.
She's from a family of seven. I'm from a family of eight. Both sort
Yeah.
of really sort of big Catholic things, and so we resonate with each other almost like siblings, really,
Yeah.
like brother and sister. Which,
Yeah.
unlike brother and sister, we rubbed it the wrong way as well, in the negative. But in the positive, it was just something so absolutely natural between us. And Rob
Fantastic.
Dickens, the head of Warner Brothers, once said to me, "Something happens to her voice when she sings your songs, and something happens to your songs when
Yeah.
she sings them."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's absolutely true. We're both get better,
Yeah.
and it's just, but without trying. It wasn't like we tried to do anything. It just happened when
Just
we played
happened.
together.
That's fabulous. I love that. So tell me a bit about, I mean, you've written one of the biggest songs ever, haven't you? Perfect is such a, I mean, in bars, and if you walk down to, if you go out tonight somewhere into a town, there's a fair chance if you go into a place with live music that somebody will sing in that song. It's one of those classic hits. And to tell me about the kind of the story behind that song, or how that came to be born into the world. Where were you at with that?
Well, that was kind of going back a bit before. I was living in Cricklewood,
Yeah.
not in Fordwich Road Academy of Fine Popular Music, around the corner, in Exeter Road, which was, and the next door neighbour was Manuel, as in from Faulty Towers. The wasn't Andrew Sachs was the
Oh,
next door
wow.
neighbour.
Okay.
Thing coming out. And Bros lived on that same road.
What a road. Brilliant.
That's where they grew up. It was like, yeah, it was a pretty surreal street. Anyway, but I lived in this bedsit there, and anyway, I had this girlfriend, and this is before Jane, and it's not going very well. I remember waking up one morning and I started to write the song. I don't want half-hearted love affairs, and it was sort of reggae. I don't like this sort of thing. And I didn't quite know what the chorus was of this song, and I had the sort of verse, like the first verse sort of thing, and it sat there. And then when I went to America, and the story I just told you,
Yeah.
then when I was doing the garden and everything, I had the same situation with a different girlfriend. And this is not right. I got to get out of here. and and I just came up with the chorus. It's got to be, and I did this little demo with Jane. She sang into a cassette player, and I had this tape. And I came back to England. I went back to the Academy of Fine Popular Music, Squat, and I had a little demo of the song there. And I thought, this is really catchy. This song.
Yeah.
It's very catchy. In fact, once it's in my head, it's in my head all day long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, when we were doing the fairground, when Eddie and I started playing together, we were doing a lot of the other songs that we later on recorded, but they were kind of more sort of slow songs, sort of poetic things. But we needed some more up tempo, and I thought, got this one perfect. But Eddie probably will think it's too poppy or throwaway, and I thought I have to present it to her in the right way. So I did reverse psychology and said, I've got this song. I don't think we should do it. I don't think
Okay.
it's really right for us. And
Yeah.
I just played it to her, and then I just changed the subject. She went, what's wrong? Well, I think that's great. We should do that. Well, no, yeah, really, if you really want to, sort of thing. She will, she, she'll never say this. If you spoke to her, she will tell you a different story, but I'm telling you my version
Yeah. Yeah.
of events. And anyway, so we that night we paid it. We were doing a gig at a place called the Duke of something or another, Duke of Wellington, a pub anyway in Balls Pond Road in Islington, with Simon and Roy's wedding. I think it was the first gig where the four of us played together all the way through, and we did the set. And at the end of it, so let's try that new one, perfect, that we did. So we did it. Eddie sort of knew one of the verses, and we sang it. And by the end of the song, the whole audience was singing along with it. And I thought, it's just like an old song.
Yeah.
It's just an
Okay.
old song that
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
heard, and they all know it. And someone came up to me afterwards and said, that song will go to number one, and the next year, the year later, it was number one.
Bloody hell.
And it did. And it was mind blowing. Actually, it really was mind blowing.
It is. It's just it does have that kind of standard feel to it, like a classic standard sort of song. Um, but it kind of feels like it kind of just fell out of the air a little bit in the way that you were describing it. Just writing a few words and then out popped the chorus. Was it quite an easy flowing thing to write?
Yeah, I don't really remember writing it really.
Amazing,
Yeah, just
amazing.
like most, I just write songs that come into my head that are about my life, like a diary.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've only really recently realized that really, once again, it was still, it was from the Bible, really. It's
Okay.
the Gospel of Saint Matthew, be ye perfect.
Yeah, sure.
So it says, of course, it says, be ye perfect. It's basically, Saint Matthew really should get a co-write on that,
A
really.
royalty credit. How
Yeah.
amazing. That's brilliant. How amazing. So you've written with lots of different people as well. You collaborated with lots of different people who Morrissey, Ringo, even. So, what do you enjoy from the kind of collaboration process of songwriting? Is it kind of, oh, I guess, what do you love and what do you not love about collaborating? Is there anything particular that you get from it or and don't get from it?
Well, I never wanted to co-write. I never had any desire to do it. I found it's a very personal thing writing songs, and they came out.
Yeah.
I was also a bit of a loner walking down the street with songs coming in my head, and I just couldn't really understand it. It was just like wearing somebody else's underpants, really, writing a song with somebody else.
Yeah.
It was only when the band broke up, and I was really devastated. I mean, I'm utterly
Yeah,
devastated
I'm
when the band
sure.
broke up. It
Yeah.
was because we had been so successful so quickly, and then to
Yeah.
suddenly it was all over. It's like, it was like falling off a cliff,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what to do. And I didn't want, I didn't, I wanted the band. I wanted Eddie
Yeah.
to sing my songs. I didn't want anybody else. I
Yeah.
still don't do know. I never did.
Yeah.
And it was heartbreaking. And what happened was, how did it happen? Oh yeah, it was Kirsty MacColl rang. I got a call from her, and she said, "Oh, I was talking because I'd done some recording with her before Fairground Attraction when she first started, and she said, oh, I was listening to an old demo the other day, and there was a guitar solo on it, and I said to Gavin Povey, the keyboard player, who's that playing guitar on that track we did years ago?" She says, "Oh, I think it was Mark Nevin." So what's he up to these days? He's a Fairground. He said, "Yeah, him. I didn't realize that was him. Yeah, yeah. Oh, could you come and play the guitar again? And we're going to we want to re-record this song." So I went down to her house up to her house in Ealing. I hadn't seen her for a long time, and she played me the song. I said, "That's not me." She was like, "Oh, isn't it?" I said, "No, I've never heard it in my life before." She said, "Oh." And he says, "Well, would you like to write some songs?" And I thought, "Oh, okay." I don't really write songs. And the way she writes songs, which is a way that she sort of learned from Morrissey and Johnny Marr, was by you just do a tape of like what sounded like a song without singing on it,
Yeah.
and give it to her, and she would just sing lyrics over the top. I thought, well, that's not writing a song.
Right. Okay.
That's
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 yeah.
weird. But
Yeah.
so I did this, and she wrote all these songs. And to me, it was so easy because to me, the wrestling with the lyric and everything was
Yeah.
the hard.
Yeah.
But so I just did these tracks, and she sung over the top. And all these songs that were written between us were written that way. So we never once sat in the room and wrote a song together. So and then I got a call when I was recording with her. I was recording "Walking Down Madison," which is a song she wrote with Johnny Marr. Was at Townhouse Studios, and I was in there recording this song. And the phone rang. I said, "Oh, this is before mobiles, of course. They said, oh, Mark, there's a phone call for you." I went to the phone, and they said, "Oh, it's my publisher." He said, "Oh, I've just got some good news. Julio Iglesias has done one of your songs." I went, "Really? God, that's strange. What a bizarre thing."
Wow.
That's weird. And then about an hour later, the phone rang. "Oh, it's your publisher again." "Oh, hello." I said, yeah, I just had a call from this guy. He's Morrissey's manager. He wants you to write songs with Morrissey. I went, really? He says,
Wow.
oh, it's weird. So I said, how? He says, yeah, just send him some music. I said, what? Just send him some music. What? It's the same as Kirsty. Just put some music onto a tape and send it to him. Send it to, address it to Mr. Reynolds. I said, what do you mean? Burt Reynolds, in fact, put Burt Reynolds on the tape and his address in Manchester because otherwise it gets his mail nicked. So you got to
Right. Right. Right.
disguise it as to Burt Reynolds. I thought, well, doesn't Burt Reynolds get his?
Yeah.
Obviously not.
Yeah.
Maybe this guy sends his letters as Morrissey. But anyway, so I sent this tape off to Burt Reynolds, and I got a letter, a card about 2 days later, and it just said a postcard. It just said perfect on the
Wow.
back.
Okay. That's funny. Yeah.
Send more. So I kept sending these tapes to him to Burt Reynolds, and he kept sending back these letters. I've got them somewhere. They're like really funny letters.
How
All
amazing.
this
That's yeah. What
thoroughly,
artifact that is.
very funny letters, and I didn't meet him. I didn't even speak to him.
Oh,
And then
really?
one day, no, and then I did eventually. Like,
Yeah.
I was walking down the street to put a jiffy bag addressed to Burt Reynolds in the post box in Camden where I lived then. And Morrissey was just walking past the post box. I went, "Oh, Morrissey." I said, "This is for you." And I handed him a jiffy bag. And he just went bright red. He was there with his glasses on. He was bright red, very embarrassed, very shy. So I thought,
Crikey.
okay. He said, "I'll see you in the studio." I went, "Okay." And then I didn't see him until I turned up at Hook End Manor Studios, a residential studio in Oxfordshire. And I just was driving in, and he was cycling past on his bike with his glasses on and his quiff, looking like that "Stop Me If You Heard
Yeah.
This One
Yeah.
Before" video of the
Yes.
Smiths.
Yeah.
I thought, this is really weird day, you know. And I went into the studio, and it was Mark Bedford on bass from Madness and Andy Parisi on drums, and we would sort of play the songs through, and then he would come in and sing on top. And that would be the first time I heard the song properly, was when we were recording it in the studio.
Wow.
The
Is it
first one
new?
was
Is it quite weird to listen back to give your baby away and and it comes back with someone else's take?
well, yeah, but it didn't really feel like my baby because it just felt so easy. I thought, this is just not right. This is not writing songs.
Okay.
This is just making up a track.
Yeah, sure.
But this is what they were, Kirsty and Morrissey were doing, because this is the way that Johnny and Morrissey
Right.
worked, and so that's
Yeah.
how they did it. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, okay, I can do that, and I did loads of it, and it was great because I wrote these songs with these amazing people, but it never really felt like songwriting to me, the way it
Sure.
does when you sit down with a song on your own or with somebody
Yeah.
else and you
Yeah.
battle it out, and.
Do you have a place that you like to write in? Do you have like a space or a place which is particularly kind of good at giving you songs, or is it anywhere and everywhere?
Well, in this room is where I am now,
Yeah.
but no, I don't really have any of that. It's more the space is more of a sort of spiritual space of just kind of being in a position of receptivity,
Yeah.
which I am in anyway all the time.
Sure.
I like that. If you put your hands like that, and you hold them with your palms up, I occupy that position
Yeah.
like on a radio,
Yeah.
and I just tune to where the songs are, and they come
Beautiful.
in.
Beautiful. I love that. Do you think songs come from somewhere else then? Do you think they're not of your making, you're kind of bringing them into the world via a kind of spiritual element to it?
Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. I don't write any songs; I just find them.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how it feels for me. Like I've had one came through the other day where I woke up with this music in my head and just grabbed the guitar, and it's far too difficult for something. The thing that came to me, if you like, is way too difficult for something that I would write. So it took me like 10
Yeah,
minutes to try and find how to actually play it, because I wouldn't be able to do that. And that relationship between us as songwriters and whatever it is, the unknown, I mean, it's something to dedicate your life to, isn't it? It's such a fascinating, mysterious, beautiful
yeah,
relationship.
absolutely. Yeah. I
And
just read an interview with Paul Simon the other day. he's got this new sort of mini album out called Seven Psalms, and he said, I just had this dream, and in the dream his voice said, you have to write an album called Seven Psalms. It was just literally a voice saying those words to me. So I thought, well, I better do that then. And he starts writing it, and then he goes, then I couldn't get any further. He says, so I waited for more information, and I just loved that. I waited for
That's
more
so good.
information,
That's so
and
good.
that's it. Yeah.
Brilliant. When was the last time you heard someone else's song and it kind of blew your head? And can you remember that or who it was and why?
Um, Recently, God, what have I heard? I haven't, must say that I've not. I like to be able to say that, but I can't. Oh, well, I can't, well, that's not even a new song. It's a folk song of Bonnie Light Horseman. I really like them, and I love their version of the song Bonnie Light Horseman. But that is, I think it's an old song.
That's cool.
Um,
An old song
but in
you've
terms of,
recently heard is good.
yeah, that is lovely. Bonnie Light. Have you heard that Bonnie Light
I
Horseman?
don't know. No, I haven't actually. No.
They're very good. We saw them at Union Chapel.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Beautiful singing, and lovely guitar playing. Yeah, that the track, the main track, Bonnie Light Horseman, is really something else. That is something else.
I shall check that out.
Can't, I can't really think of what, you know, one of the things that I went for a long phase where I didn't do much music, and I studied and qualified to be a psychotherapist for about
Wow.
5 years. And
Fantastic.
I thought that I wasn't going to go back to doing music, but not, I thought I'd sort of done it. And then it was kind of through one of Chris Difford's workshops at Pennard, where
Yeah.
he said he'd always invite me to them because I'd gone to them years ago when he first started doing them. Then I stopped for ages. And one of the people on the list that made me go back to Pennard was Beth Nielsen Chapman,
Yeah.
and her song "Sand and Water" and "Color of Roses."
Yeah.
Those two songs, when my parents died in 1999, my parents died 2 months apart.
Wow.
And I used to listen to those two songs and three Joni Mitchell songs on this tape, round and round and round and round. And so I love Beth's songs. And so when Chris said Beth's there, I said, right, I'm coming.
Fantastic. Yeah, she's a
And I
brilliant
first,
songwriter.
yeah.
When
And
you
so,
when you're writing songs, like you say, where the music, that relationship between the muse, if you like, and they're coming through, is that the same for you with words, or is the words more of a laborious thing for you?
oh no, the words, I'm really talking about the words really more than anything. To me,
Okay.
the music, I don't really even really think about the music. The music seems to be connected to the words.
Okay.
I find I'm always thinking in terms of finding truth. That's what I think I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know that if you must have heard that thing, is it Michelangelo, as it said, how it said to someone, so how do you make all of those fantastic sculptures? He said, oh, I just chip away all the stone and find them inside.
I love
You
that. I
know
love that.
that
Yes, I have heard
it's
that.
like that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
you're looking for the beauty that's there. It exists already, and you're always looking to find it and uncover it.
Mm. And do you write every day with that quest for that beauty? Are you somebody who writes every day, or is it as and when the
Nah,
beauty hits you?
I'll go through phases, and sometimes they come and sometimes I'm always in that frame of mind, but I'm not always thinking about songwriting because I am a psychotherapist now as well,
Yeah.
and that's very similar. It's the
Yes.
same sort of thing. It's like this, and just
Yeah.
talking with somebody and jamming and riffing,
Yeah.
and creating a new narrative. So
Yeah.
it's kind of what I do in both areas of my life as a songwriter and as a psychotherapist. I riff
Mm.
and create a new narrative.
What a fabulous way of putting it. I love that. I've got a fan question here, Mark, from another great songwriter, actually, Peter James Milson, his name is. But he says, how do you keep the words so simple and clear, but never simplistic? It's a hell of a trick. And he says, Kite Flyers Hill is one of his favorites. So that's Pete's question for you there. How do you keep the words so simple and clear, but never simplistic?
Uh, I don't know. I
Yeah.
never, well, I never tried to do anything I never tried to ever be clever. I never tried to pretend to be intelligent. I just try to tell the truth
Yeah.
as it comes to me,
Yeah.
and it's simple. That's all. Kite Flyers Hill. I mean, that's, as I said, when I went to Eddie,
Mm.
that's where Eddie and I sort of agreed to be a band. And the song I'd wrote later was when I just thought, I just want to get the band back together. I just want to get back with Eddie. And so the song's written, it's about Eddie, really. Sometimes I wish we would go up to Kite Flyers Hill, and one day I'll go up there and you'll be there again.
Beautiful.
And I'll show you this. You won't be able to hear it on your blog, but you'll be able to see it now. And so about a week ago, Eddie sent me this. Where is it? Come on. So I'm looking at a WhatsApp thing here to your listeners. I'm looking for something. It's on here somewhere. There it is. And so she sent me that. There's Eddie there on Kite Flyers Hill
Oh,
for
that's
the first
beautiful.
time in 35 years.
Fantastic. I love that. Beautiful. If you were to give advice to people that wanted to write songs or any kind of things I mean, it's pretty clear that from what you're saying about your process, but if you were to give someone some advice as a songwriter or something, a tip or a kind of um, some guidance, what would you offer up?
Well, I'd say for a start, don't even think that you write any songs. You just receive them
Yeah.
and be grateful and open and just listen to what comes in and just obey he who sends them.
Yeah.
And you're just a servant. I got a song on my last album called Am I the Architect? And it just says, me, I am a brickie on a building site. And as I was packing up my trowel and hod last night, a passing by inquired, is this your place? It took a while to register the question on his face. He says, oh, am I the architect? That's what you want to know. Of course I'm not. Of course I'm not. I'm just a brickie, a humble working man. And though sometimes it's tricky, I do the best I can to
Beautiful.
understand the plan.
That's great.
And that's it. You've got to be a bricklayer.
Mm.
Paul Simon, saw an interview with Paul Simon on Jules Holland a few years ago, and he had a new album out at the time, and Jules said, "So, Paul, can you tell me what is the inspiration behind this new album?" And he says, "Oh, there's no inspiration. It's my job.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's what I do.
It's what you do. I love
I
that.
turn up."
Turn up, listen. You're right. Actually, you just summed up my process as well. Actually, I can sit down and write a song, but like the job really is to just get out of the way and just let that come through. It's a very beautiful way of eloquent way of putting it. So is that God then, do you think, for you? Would you go there
Yeah,
with it? Yeah.
that is God. Yeah,
Yeah.
it becomes, people are terrified of talking about God these days, but it's great loss to them. And fear is the enemy of love. And if you just give up fear and let all the good stuff come in, just hold your
Mm.
hands out in that right way, and everything's there for you if you open the doors to your heart and your mind, and it's a bottomless supply of good stuff.
And how do you reckon you let go of fear?
Um, well, have gone. You just well, you don't try and run away from it. I mean, there used to be that so old self-help book in the 80s, feel the fear and do it anyway. And nothing, you just got to feel it. Don't run away from it. Burn through it and come out the other side. Don't numb yourself with alcohol or drugs. Just feel any feelings until they pass, and they do. Like pleasure and pain are fleeting,
Yeah.
but what is eternal is eternal. And if you think of the word temple, it's in the same root as the word tempo. It's where timelessness is. And
Mm.
when you leave the tempo of everyday life and enter the temple, you enter into eternity, where there's this endlessness. And when you walk in there, you're in touch with everything. All the on the internet, in Google, it's just like baby stuff. This is talking about your infinite wisdom, and everything is in timelessness, in eternity. Pleasure and pain are fleeting, so don't fear them.
Beautiful, and just what I needed to hear today as well. As someone in recovery, I am all about looking for these kind of answers like that. That's a great thing. Here's a question for you. Just I ask everybody this question just before our hour's up, which is, if you could have written any other song, if you could have received another song, lived with it in your head, channeled it, whatever the process is for you or for anyone else, what song would you have loved to have kind of spent some time with that isn't one of your songs, that's someone else's songs? What song would you have liked to live with for a while?
I think the song that comes to mind as is "Let It Be Me" by the Everly Brothers. They didn't actually write that song, did they? It's written by an Italian woman, I think.
Okay.
I think it's written by an Italian couple. God bless the day I found you. That one,
Yeah,
Let
I
It Be
do.
Me.
Yeah.
Everly Brothers. I think that's just gorgeous, that song.
Fantastic.
Something so simple and perfect and pure in it.
Yeah. So, Mark, what have you got upcoming in terms of writing or music at the moment?
Well, I am actually going to do a gig for the first time in must be about 4 years on June the 8th at West Hampstead Arts Club in Mill Lane, which is actually just round the corner from Fordwich Road, the Academy of Fine Popular Music. It's literally a 2-minute walk from it. So I'm going back to the original place to sing there, and it's a lovely little club, West Hampstead Arts Club. And I've got great musicians, Ed Blunt and Paul Reynolds on piano and double bass.
Great.
And I'm very grateful to them, because I wasn't planning to do any more shows particularly, and they dragged me out and they've made me rehearse, and it sounded amazing. So I'm very excited to do this. And if anyone listening coming along, go to West Hampstead Arts Club website and get a ticket quickly, because it's very small and it'll be sold out, and it's going to be great.
Fantastic. Mark, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and it's beautiful to hear you speak so eloquently about songwriting and some hilarious stories. And thank you so much. And listeners, please, there's so many, great Mark albums that I've been enjoying listening to over the last few days, particularly Mark, a song called Show Me Who You Are, which is absolutely stunning of yours. A beautiful song.
Well, I wrote that with David Wilcox. He's a great songwriter from Asheville, Tennessee, not Nashville, but Asheville. And that was quite a strange one, because in the song it says, how's it? All that I asked for is a cardiovascular beep on a screen, and basically saying, well, I'm just glad to be alive, sort of thing. And just shortly after that, I got really ill, went to hospital, and I literally was living it with a cardiovascular beep on a screen. And when I came out, I was nearly dead.
Wow.
I was literally in Royal Free Hospital, looking over Kite Flyers Hill. That's a view out of my window. And I came out, and yeah, and so the orchestration on that is done by a great guy. Oh God, I can't write a complete blank of his name now. What's his name? I feel terrible. Oh, this is on live as well. What's his name? His orchestration, his arrangement is fantastic, and he sent me this track. He sent me, just to do a guide vocal on, and I was just literally like sitting here, like nearly dying. And so it was like no acting required, because I was nearly dead when I sang it. And of course, then when I got better, we said, let's do a new proper vocal. And of course, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
You do the proper vocal, and so the one on the record is me keeling over.
Okay, that's
Nigel Hopkins.
Nigel. Got him.
Fantastic, Nigel Hopkins arranger. What a genius! Yeah.
It's a phenomenal song and phenomenal arrangement, and also a great vocal performance. I was thinking that last night. There's something about that vocal, so that's quite interesting to hear.
It's barely alive.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much for your time, mate, and have a lovely weekend.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.